accidentally scratched. Discover the amazing transformation that left a billionaire speechless. Sarah dashed through the bustling diner. Her focus narrowed on the steaming coffee cups stacked precariously before her. She was a whirlwind of motion, dodging patrons and the overstuffed booths that hugged the walls. But in a split second, everything halted. The heel of her worn waitress shoes caught on the smooth pavement outside, sending her tumbling toward a sleek, black sports car, a beast of chrome and power, recently parked with an air of authority that seemed to hum through the morning air. Crunch! The sound echoed in her mind, striking fear into the core of her being. When she glanced up, her heart sank as she met the furious gaze of the car's owner, Derek Langston. Derek stepped closer, his polished veneer shattered. "What the hell?" he roared, the tightness of his voice sending tremors through her stomach. But it wasn't the scratch on the surface of his car that caught his attention. It was the small napkin clutched in her trembling hand, adorned with a half-finished doodle of an elephant. A flicker of curiosity darted across Derek's typically stoic face, and Sarah felt a fleeting sense of hope pierced by a deep, gnawing anxiety. Could a mere doodle redeem her in this moment? Would he see her as just a waitress or something more? What choice did she really have? Torn between her family's needs and the tantalizing chance to reclaim her passion for art, Sarah's mind was a battlefield. Images of her father's failed store invaded her thoughts, the shuttered windows, the empty aisles reflecting their financial collapse, and her mother's nightly worries etched into the bags under her eyes. It was her job to keep them afloat now, to hold everything together. Yet, Derek's unexpected entry kindled a fire of ambition in her that felt both liberating and terrifying. What if she found success, only to abandon her family in the process? The thought clawed at her, as real as the scratch on the car. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. With each passing day spent working alongside Derek in his sprawling gallery, the pressure intensified. The art world opened before her like a vast expanse, ripe with possibility, yet her looming doubts shadowed every stroke of the brush. What if Derek's reputation as a ruthless businessman rubbed off on her as well? The whispers of the townsfolk haunted her. Could she accept a life tied to a man of wealth and power, a man so different from her struggling reality? As she painted, her hands trembled with the weight of expectation. Every canvas held the potential for freedom or the risk of drowning in scandal. Then came the gala, a high-profile event pulsating with the energy of hope and anxiety. When an unexpected scandal threatened to surface, casting a pall over her artistry, a primal fear took root. Would she stand with Derek, risking the trust of Maplewood, or would she retreat to protect her family's fragile legacy? The air thickened with unspoken questions and palpable yearning, leaving Sarah at the brink of revelation. All eyes were on her, the amateur artist who dared to dream. Would her next brushstroke be one of liberation or abandonment? As the audience leaned in, the trembling anticipation surged, leaving Sarah caught between two stark realities: rise to her dreams or safeguard the legacy of the town that had once cradled her hopes. The air in the gallery hummed with tension, the vibrant colors of Sarah's paintings swirling under the spotlight like vivid dreams yearning to escape the confines of her past. Derek's presence loomed nearby, his dark eyes piercing through the fabric of her insecurities. In that moment, he was not merely an industry titan, but also her anchor and her storm. The murmurs of the crowd enveloped her, their expectations wrapping around her like a noose, yet they fueled her desire to break free, determined not to let fear paralyze her. Sarah inhaled deeply. Each breath felt like a step onto a precipice. Could she trust her intuition? With every brushstroke, she poured her heart into the canvas, hoping it would not only capture the vibrancy within her, but could also silence the critics she feared were already lining up to judge her ascendance. Derek hovered beside her as she focused on her canvas, his expression careful and contemplative. "You've got talent, Sarah," he said, his voice low. "Don't let anyone convince you otherwise. Just a few words from him ignited a flicker of confidence, but also amplified her latent self-doubt. What did he really see when he looked at her, a potential business partner, a mere waitress, or someone chasing shadows? In the days that followed, Sarah wrestled with her choices as she continued to produce a series of paintings. The gallery welcomed each installment with bated breath. Critics began circling, whispering about the brilliance emerging from a small-town girl. Yet, it was at night, alone in her small apartment, that she felt the weight of uncertainty settle on her shoulders. Would they still applaud her work tomorrow, or would the pedestal shatter beneath her? One fateful night, while flipping through a stack of art magazines, Sarah stumbled upon an article about a prestigious national art competition. Her pulse quickened as she read the details. The winner would receive funding for a solo exhibition, a golden ticket to escape her current life. It felt dangerously appealing yet terrifying, a siren call from an unknown depth that could swallow her whole if she did not navigate carefully. In the wake of that revelation, she found herself at a crossroads. Submission would require her to fully invest herself, to remove any safety nets tethering her to the diner and the demands of her family. Could she risk it all on a chance? Her skills or her passion was merely a diluted whisper in a world dominated by professionals. As Derek's support loomed large, a startling realization began to crystallize. He wasn't just a benefactor. He had begun to see her potential far more acutely than she ever had. That night, she decided to confide in him about the competition. "It's a huge risk," she admitted, her voice wavering slightly. "What if I fail?" His answer surprised her. "What if you don't?" His eyes glinted in the dim gallery light, revealing a resolve she hadn't anticipated. "You have to trust in your work, Sarah. Living in doubt won't fulfill your true potential." Driven anew by Derek's words, she took to her canvases with a fervor she hadn't mustered before. Each stroke resonated deeper, reflecting not just her artistry, but also the tumult of her internal journey. Yet, shadows of anxiety lurked. What if the competition exposed her for what she truly was, a fledgling artist lost in the shadows of towering giants? With the deadline loomed closer, every moment became a question of whether she could truly embrace her dreams, or whether the weight of obligation would force her back into the frame of her former life. Just as she was about to submit her work, a knock echoed through the gallery of visitor, unexpected and unwelcome. As she opened the door, her heart raced. Standing before her was her family, the weight of their collective history resting upon her shoulders. "Sarah, we need to talk," her mother said, panic lacing her voice. The confrontation was inevitable. They had come for answers, and her future hung in the balance. Would this discussion ground her vision or pull her further into the depths of familial obligation? The moment of truth approached. The door cracked open, revealing her family framed against the dim light of the gallery hallway. Their expressions were a mixture of determination and worry, radiating a familiarity that struck Sarah like a wave of nostalgia. Her mother stepped forward, her brow furrowed, embodying all the unspoken expectations Sarah had tried to escape. "We need to talk," her mother insisted, urgency underlining her words that Sarah's heart thudded, its rhythm echoing the tightness in her throat. Would this be a conversation about her choices, her art, or the obligations that had always been presumed? She stepped aside, motioning for them to enter, but the weight pressing down on her was undeniable. Would they steal away this newfound courage she had mustered? As they settled into the gallery room, her father remained silent, arms crossed, an expression unreadable. It was all too familiar a dynamic she thought she had left behind. "Is this since you've been working at the gallery?" her mother began, glancing around as though trying to piece together Sarah's life from the walls adorned with her creations. "You know we worry about you. Your job at the diner wasn't glamorous, but it was safe." "Safe," Sarah echoed, visceral irritation creeping into her voice. The canvases surrounding them were vibrant testaments to her fight for something more, yet her family still clung to the notion that safety was the highest ideal. "Do you really think living a life of restraint is what I want?" Her mother's demeanor softened. "We just don't want you to get hurt. It's easy to get lost in this world. This art, it's unpredictable." Each word felt like chains coiling around Sarah's ambition, dragging her back to the familiar contours of fear and self-doubt. She took a steadying breath, conjuring Derek's words to fortify her resolve. It's a risk I'm willing to take, she asserted, feeling a flicker of determination igniting within. I've been given an opportunity, a national competition. Winning could change everything for me. A tangible silence thickened the air. Sarah's parents exchanged glances, and she wondered what went unsaid. So you would throw everything away for this dream? Her father finally interjected, skepticism thickening the atmosphere. Art doesn't pay the bills, Sarah. We can't support you in this illusion. Illusion. The word sliced through her like a dagger. All the nights spent pouring her soul into her art, each canvas a piece of her, suddenly felt dismissed. It's not an illusion. It's who I am, who I'm becoming. The more she spoke, the clearer her vision became. If I take this leap, it could elevate not just my career, but my entire life. I need you to see that this isn't just a hobby for me. With every declaration, she felt barriers beginning to crack. It was as if shades were drawn back, revealing bright light. Her mother looked at her, her expression shifting, perhaps recognizing the spark of passion that had always flickered within Sarah. And what about us, Sarah? Her voice was smaller now, almost pleading. What happens to your family, your responsibilities? In that pivotal moment, Sarah confronted the truth of her situation, the weight of familial obligation, the fear of failure, and the burden of expectations. This was not merely about art. It was a battle for autonomy, forged through unrelenting self-discovery. I have to live my truth, she said firmly. I refuse to be defined by your fears. The words hung heavily in the air, and the silence stretched, laden with the echoes of her declaration. As her family absorbed her revelations, Sarah felt the tremors of her own doubts begin to subside. A door inside her had cracked open, allowing the light of possibility to flood into previously shadowy corners. Would this confrontation serve as a springboard for her growth or plunge her back into obligation-driven darkness? The answer that awaited her hung precariously, just out of reach. Suddenly, a thought emerged: if they could not understand, could she truly break free from their influence? The stakes were higher than ever, and she felt the delicate balance of risk and reward shift in the air. I need your support, she said, voice unwavering. But I want to compromise who I am. Her heart raced, but it wasn't fear this time, it was resolve. The room felt charged, anticipation mingling with trepidation as the future loomed just beyond their interaction. Would they see her potential this time, or would the suffocating weight of familial expectation pull her back into the shadows? As the tension thickened, the door creaked open to a new reality, one that promised growth, power, and, more importantly, her truth. But was she ready to embrace both the blessings and burdens that would come with that choice? She could feel it in her bones that the moment of reckoning was upon her. Would she risk it all for her passion? The answer awaited just beyond the precipice. The atmosphere remained thick with uncertainty, each second stretching into an eternity as Sarah watched her parents grapple with her bold assertions. Their expressions, once brimming with concern, were now marred by a mix of confusion and something deeper, fear, perhaps. It was a chapter in their family's narrative she had long resisted rewriting, but the ink was still wet. The conflict between expectations and self-liberation played out palpably in the charged silence. What do you want us to say, Sarah? Her father finally broke the stillness, voice heavy with disbelief. Do you honestly believe that this is viable? You have a real chance to establish a secure future, and you want to gamble it away for, what? A dream? The question struck her like a cold wave, awakening remnants of doubt that she had hoped were buried. Could this venture be another mirage, an overreach fueled by youthful ambition? But somewhere deep within her, a flame flickered defiantly. She had built her world around canvases, colors, and emotions that languished when pushed aside. Because it's what I want, she declared, her voice steady despite the turmoil inside. This isn't just about the competition. It's my life. In that moment, Sarah felt herself standing upon the precipice of transformation. The weight she had carried, the familial obligations and expectations had begun to dissipate, revealing a clearer vision of what lay ahead. It wasn't just a chance to enter a competition. It was an opportunity to carve a path that was distinctly hers, to advocate for her dreams, even if it meant walking through the fires of her family's scrutiny. As her parents processed her declaration, flashes of her journey raced through her mind. Late nights spent laboring over half-finished canvases, the thrill of new concepts coming together, the exhilarating fear that accompanied each exhibition. Did they not understand how critical this chance was in affirming her identity? I understand your concerns, but what you see as illusion, I see as potential, she continued, the conviction unmistakable in her voice. Every ounce of fear I confront the uncertainty, the possibility of failure makes me stronger. I have to take chances, otherwise, what is the point? Though muted, she noticed the imperceptible shift in her mother's posture. It was subtle, but in that expression Sarah discerned the first tentative steps toward understanding the breadth of her passion. I'm not asking you to approve of my choices, she softened, but I need you to recognize this as part of who I am becoming. Her father's skepticism hardened, arms folding tighter, but even he could not deny there was a spark of transformation in her words. An undercurrent of pride mingled with fear swept through her as she watched her mother's face soften with the barest glimmer of acceptance. If they couldn't stand beside her, then she would walk this path alone. The thought steeled her resolve, igniting a surge of determination that coursed through her veins. Now that I've made my stance clear, it's time for action, she stated, pivoting slightly as if opening the door to new possibilities. I'll be working on new pieces for the competition, and I intend to make every moment count. Help me, or don't, but this is my journey. The finality of her words felt liberating, like stepping through a threshold into uncharted territory. It was time to engage with the challenge ahead, to reach for that elusive prize while asserting her identity. Confrontation had begun to transform into realization. Her family's fears, which had once suffocated her, now unveiled a path of individual empowerment. As she walked away from the tense gathering, feeling emboldened, an idea burgeoned in her mind. What if her art could not only speak to her experience, but also blur the lines, creating new dialogues with her family? It was a risky experiment, yet one that could serve her dual purpose, reclaiming her voice and potentially bridging the chasm that had formed between her world and theirs. The thought formed a nascent plan, stirred by ambition and the hope that her art could catalyze change. What if, by harnessing the passion, she could bring them into her world rather than estranging them? But the task would demand her utmost focus and creativity, pushing her limits as she aimed for the riskiest leap of all. And as the night draped itself over the gallery, Sarah felt a sonorous call deep within, a beckoning to not only fight for her dreams, but to find herself through them in ways she had yet to explore. But would this gamble extend beyond her art to her very relationships? The thrill of uncertainty loomed tantalizingly, urging her to take that next step. Undeterred by the lingering air of uncertainty, Sarah awoke the next morning with renewed clarity. The chirping of the birds outside her window struck her like a call to arms. The sun's first rays spilled across her studio, illuminating her canvases, each a testament to her untold stories, her yearnings, and a life yet to be painted. She approached her easel, the wooden surface smoothed by years of creation. Each brushstroke felt like both a challenge and a promise. The competition was looming ahead, but her vision extended beyond it. This was an exploration of her identity, a foray into artistry that demanded she bleed her soul into every piece. What message would best convey her transformation? As she dipped her brush into the vibrant hues, an unexpected wave of anxiety washed over her. Was her artistic voice powerful enough to reach through the barriers she'd built with her family? Honesty held a weight that could shatter expectations, a risk most artists grappled with. But who was she, if not brave in her pursuit? This was her moment to embrace authenticity amidst vulnerability. With each stroke, she poured her feelings onto the canvas, weaving fragments of her fear, desire, and conviction into abstract swirls of color. She envisioned a grand reveal, not only a debut of artwork, but a potential avenue for communication with her parents. If she could paint her truth vividly, maybe they could see the passion lighting their daughter anew. Days turned into weeks, and Sarah dedicated herself to this endeavor with laser focus. With a wall covered in drafts, she dissected every aspect of her work, what resonated, what fell short. Hidden within her frustrations lay the seeds of revelation. One night, staring at her latest piece in progress, an epiphany flickered. This layer of chaos reflected the very conflict she faced in her relationships. The tension between expectations and desires, the the struggle for connection amid misunderstanding. Encouraged by the insight, she began to craft a series of visual diary tracing the journey from shadows to light, from a place of doubt to self-acceptance. Moving past the initial fear of judgment, she realized that even the potential criticism could serve a higher purpose. If her parents witnessed her growth reflected in observable form, perhaps it could ignite mutual recognition. Could it truly be possible that her art might dissolve the barriers, enabling her to confront the expectations that had haunted her? To capture this complex dynamic, she shifted to a symbolic representation. Her family ties became interwoven branches struggling to thrive in a storm, yet determined to reach toward the sun. The metaphor drew her deeper. This was not just about her dreams, but about her very existence within her family's narrative. Yet, as she explored this emotional territory through vibrant colors, she found another layer of herself emerging, fearless, strong, yet exquisitely tender. Sarah began to question the implications her art might unleash. What if unveiling these pieces revealed the rawest truths about her, aspects she had not fully come to terms with? A heavy weight sat within her chest. She recognized this as a pivotal moment of self-realization. As she prepared for her first exhibit, Sarah understood that this venture was less about external validation and more a confrontational assertion of self. Stepping into the public, I would demand a level of fortitude she had yet to fully embrace. Would she truly share her heart with the world? The night of her exhibit approached, casting a long shadow of anticipation and doubt. It was one thing to create, another entirely to allow others to peer into her soul. Sarah's thoughts raced. What if the familial rift only widened after they saw her work? Would they welcome her art? Or would it become a new battlefield in an already strained relationship? In the stillness before the exhibition, as she stood in her studio amidst unfinished works, she felt a strong resolve unfolding. Tomorrow would demand more than just a presentation. It would require vulnerability and the courage to face the consequences head-on. Either way, she knew there would be no turning back. A storm swirled within her as she grasped her brush, the outline of her aspirations firming up like a promise. What crucial revelation awaited her tomorrow? As the dawn broke on the day of her exhibit, Sarah stood transfixed in front of her easel, a brush hovering above a blank canvas. The weight of her impending presentation pressed heavily upon her, each moment steeping in a mixture of dread and exhilaration. The quiet of her studio contrasted with the tumultuous thoughts racing through her mind. She contemplated the notion of vulnerability, pondering whether enough had layered onto her canvases to paint the intricacies of her heart. Taking a deep breath, she resolved to see it not as a display, but as an act of courage and invitation for understanding. For years, she had hidden her true self beneath the guise of expectation. Today was the moment to tear those layers away. Stepping back, she surveyed her completed pieces. Each canvas portrayed an aspect of her journey. They were reflections of the battles she had fought within her family dynamics, stirred by dreams often dismissed. She questioned her rationale. Once more, had she captured the essence of what it meant to confront familial love alongside personal authenticity? Or had she merely skirted the edges of her own narrative? As the hours crept closer to the exhibition opening, Sarah prepared herself mentally. She chose her outfit deliberately, a simple yet elegant dress that resonated with the maturity she sought to embody. Each accessory felt like a talisman, something to ground her amidst the chaos of vulnerability. Yet, as she dressed, the cool fabric felt like armor against the uncertainties that questioned her resolve. Arriving at the gallery, she felt apprehension swirl in her stomach. The space was alive with energy, artists mingling, patrons exchanging pleasantries. But in that crowd, Sarah felt inexplicably isolated, as though her internal world remained unfathomable to those around her. It was a stark reminder of how her journey often felt, a lonely road paved with self-discovery that few had understood. As she hung her pieces on the walls, each moment intensified her awareness of the judgment lurking beyond the surface. Would her family show up? Would her work resonate with anyone? The art world often veered into judgments wrought from preconceived notions. Each delight or critique could elude her grasp. That a wave of loneliness washed over her as she stood alone in a corner, watching attendees dart from piece to piece. Suddenly, she spotted a familiar figure in the crowd, her mother. The sight struck her like lightning. There was an emotion in her mother's eyes. Was it pride, or perhaps a flicker of understanding? Confidence swelled within Sarah, and yet self-doubt sneered at her optimism. What would her mother think when she recognized the truth behind the art? Sarah's heart raced as she grappled with the decision to approach her mother. Should she treat this moment like a tender meeting of souls, or would it risk exposing her vulnerable heart too quickly? The stakes felt monumental, a chance to forge a bridge toward healing, or to face a wall of denial. In the midst of this uncertainty, a voice resonated from across the room, calling her name. A fellow artist, Max, approached her with enthusiasm, his energy contagious. They shared a moment discussing art, but Sarah's mind drifted, consumed by thoughts of her family. Max's words turned into background noise as she surveyed the gallery, searching for connections and recognition. As the exhibit officially opened, Sarah felt the pressure to engage with the bustling crowd. She steeled herself and took a deep breath. Her gazes collided with pieces of her life hung on the walls, and as patrons began whispering interpretations, a chill of trepidation coursed through her. Here she stood, not merely an artist unveiling her work, but a daughter facing her own history, ready or not. The echoes of laughter and voices faded as her focus fell back upon her mother, who stood gesturing softly toward a canvas that resonated with the emotional landscape of Sarah's journey. The moment felt electric, charged with potential. Would this be the turning point she had envisioned? Facing her mother could either uplift the barriers of misunderstanding or deepen the divide they both attempted to cross. As reality settled into the backdrop, a new fear ignited within her. Perhaps confronting her mother was not the beginning of understanding, but the penultimate test of her courage. And just as she reached for the courage that had propelled her this far, something unexpected began to unfold beyond her control, a revelation that would challenge everything she thought she knew. Would she be embraced or dismissed? Would this moment empower her or break her entirely? The murmur of the crowd danced around Sarah, a backdrop to her internal tempest. As she steadied herself, her mother's gaze remained locked on the canvas that portrayed the most profound struggles of their relationship, a piece she titled Echoes of Home. It illustrated not only the anger but also the yearning for connection, layered with hues that evoked the complexity of love tangled in misunderstanding. She felt the heat in her cheeks, two limbs of courage and dread clawing for dominance within her chest. As her mother turned away from the artwork, their eyes finally met. In that split second, Sarah's world narrowed into a singularity of raw emotion. Would she, armed with her own resolve, risk vulnerability before the person who had molded her fears? "Mom," she breathed, her heart thudding like a drummer signaling battle. The words seemed so simple, yet it unlocked a torrent of unspoken dialogue she had practiced obsessively. Her mother approached slowly, the hesitant steps mirroring the fraught history they shared. "You've captured something," her mother said initially with restraint, eyes flitting nervously from the painting back to Sarah. But beneath the surface, an urgency swelled within her that demanded deeper inquiry. Sarah's voice quavered just slightly as she responded. "I wanted to share my truth, a piece of my journey. Maybe we can talk about it? Is that what this is about?" Her mother's tone shifted. It carried both skepticism and an undeniable intrigue. "Are you using your art to speak for you, Sarah?" The question hung in the air, heavy with implication. Was she? A knot tightened in her gut as she thought back to the years spent trying to be the person her mother wanted, dismissing her own emotional canvas in the process. This exhibit was meant to be her clarion call, a bold step toward reclaiming her narrative. "Yes," she admitted quietly, her voice caught between defiance and desperation. "Art became my outlet, my way of confronting what we've never addressed. I painted my struggles, and now I'm here, ready to face them with you." Her mother's features softened, as though surprised by the honesty laid bare before her. There lay a bridge, however fragile, woven of shared truths. Yet, Sarah couldn't deny the swirling doubts that clung to her heart. Would this embrace the understanding she craved, or would it shatter the facade she had carefully constructed for so long? She felt a sudden surge of determination. Delivering her truth wasn't simply about reconciliation. It was about empowering herself to embrace her narrative wholly, regardless of the reception. This recognition sparked an idea. Instead of merely standing in vulnerability, She could invite her mother into a dialogue formed by the art. The very pieces intended to heal could also serve as bridges toward understanding. Would you look at them with me? She urged, pointing to the nearest canvas. Let us find the story together. Her mother hesitated, caught in a whirlwind of emotions. But then, she took a step forward, inching toward the painting that had evoked so much for Sarah. As they stood side by side, Sarah felt a crack begin to form in the walls that had long insulated their relationship. What lay before them was deeply personal and transformative, yet fraught with potential misunderstanding, much like their lives. It was a chance to rewrite the script they had both played for so long. As her mother pointed out details in the artwork, Sarah's determination solidified this would be her moment to reclaim both her voice and her mother's understanding. But within her, an unsettling urge gnawed at her resolve, suggesting that reckoning could come with unforeseen costs. What if the discussion led to deeper wounds? What if promoting healing meant exposing old scars that would bleed anew? The weight of the moment pressed down on her, heavy with uncharted territory. The conversation transcended beyond art. It would extend into their lived realities, a venture into the unknown that could either dismantle their barriers or plunge them deeper into silence. Are you ready to find out what lies beneath? She thought, her breath hitching as she prepared herself for the upcoming confrontation. The culmination of her artistic journey was unfolding, and in its wake lay an acknowledgement of truths not yet revealed. As they stepped toward the next canvas, the echo of their past whispered that answers awaited. Yet, the shadow of fear reminded Sarah of the fragile line she was treading. Would they emerge from this exchange transformed, or would it become yet another chapter of misunderstanding, steeped in silence once again? The uncertainty loomed large, as present as the brush strokes on her canvases, urging her forward into the unknown. The tension swelled as Sarah and her mother stood before the canvas emblazoned with chaotic strokes and vibrant colors, each one a testament to emotions unsaid. As Sarah's eyes traced the edges of the painting, her heart raced at the prospect of revealing not just her art, but the turmoil beneath it. She had always viewed her work as a mirror, reflecting the jagged shards of her experiences, but sharing that reflection meant confronting everything that had been left untouched for years. Do you see it? Sarah finally asked, her tone unsteady but hopeful. The blurs and screams? That's where I felt lost, like I was just flailing around trying to be seen, to be understood. Her mother's gaze flickered, hinting at her vulnerability, but it quickly hardened. It's bold, I'll give you that, she said, adopting a tone that was critical yet laden with curiosity. But is it really me you want to talk about? Or is this your way of avoiding who you really are? Stinging words pierced through the air, intensifying Sarah's desire to defend not only her art, but herself. It's about both of us, Mom. It's about our history, she replied, her voice lifting with a fierceness she hadn't expected to find. I have been silent for so long, wearing masks to fit your expectations. Now, I want to be real. I'm ready to face my truth. A flicker of recognition crossed her mother's face. Was it regret or realization? Sarah couldn't tell, but she felt emboldened by her declaration. It was a risk that led her to unearth feelings long buried, yet it was invigorating as well. No longer was she merely a passive player in a constructed narrative. She was no longer restrained by fear. As they continued to observe the canvases, Sarah saw her mother's fingers nervously twitching. She needed to redirect their focus before the weight of confrontation became too much to bear. This piece here, she pointed to yet another work, the bright bursts of color intertwined with deep shadows. This was painted during a time I couldn't find my voice. I felt invisible. But in expressing that struggle, I began to define who I am outside of your expectations. The realization settled like a brick between them. Sarah was inviting her mother to witness the evolution of her identity, an evolution that had taken place separate from their strained past. Releasing the grip of her mother's approval allowed a new sense of clarity to wash over her, even if it didn't come from the person she most desired understanding from. With renewed courage, Sarah turned towards her mother. Art has given me the strength to express what I've never been able to say in words. It's paved the way for me to think critically about my life, to own my story. I know it may be uncomfortable, but I want you to be a part of my journey now. A silence hung between them, laden with significance. She was at the precipice of change, flickering glances intermixing hope and doubt. Would her mother embrace this opportunity to engage? Or would she retreat, clinging to the ghosts of their past rather than seizing the potential for healing? As her mother stood considering the vivid pieces before them, Sarah's heart raced. She felt as if she were about to step into an abyss, knowing it could lead to clarity or despair. Will she take that leap? Sarah wondered anxiously, for the confrontation was not merely with her mother, but with the versions of themselves they had long hidden from each other. In that pivotal moment, Sarah sensed it was more than a conversation about art. It was an invitation into the depths of their shared lives, the stories yet to be told, stories that could redefine their relationship or fracture it irrevocably. Questions whirled in mind as the surface began to shimmer with hints of hope. What truths had yet to remain unspoken that could either blossom into understanding or provoke deeper conflict? Could Sarah finally uncover her mother's hidden vulnerabilities, or would they remain shrouded in unacknowledged pain, spiraling once again into silence? With each heartbeat resonating against the tension in the air, Sarah felt the crucial moment approaching. What would it take for both of them to truly listen? And as they stood on the brink of revelation, a disquiet stirred within her. There were still shadows lurking in this dialogue of discovery. Would they illuminate their path or plunge them back into darkness? The weight of silence grew heavier with every passing moment. Sarah's heart pounded against her chest, threatening to eclipse everything else. She watched her mother's face, searching for some indication, a flicker of recognition in the stormy seas of emotion. Instead, her mother's expression remained a solid mask, devoid of the warmth and openness that Sarah craved. Perhaps, her mother finally said, breaking the stillness with an edge to her voice, "You think you can just paint over everything, and it will magically resolve itself? This isn't just about the art, Sarah." Her words dripped with caution, the opposing forces of disbelief and curiosity battling for dominance. "Of course, it's not just about the art. It's a reflection of me," Sarah retorted, her voice rising. "Can't you see? I'm standing up for myself in a way I never have before. Isn't that worth recognizing?" As frustration bubbled within her, the tension morphed into determination. Her art had always been a guarded conversation, a way to express unarticulated feelings, but now it served as a challenge. She needed to affirm its importance and her identity along with it. Yet, could she unlock a door long sealed shut? "I want us to break through this," she said, putting herself in the line of emotional fire. "These pieces, they document my struggle, my journey. I'm not trying to evade reality, but to confront it together." The energy shifted subtly as her mother seemed to falter, her fingers brushing against the edges of the canvas, tracing vibrant lines with a delicate intensity. For a moment, Sarah thought she could see the walls begin to crack, the fortress of silence crumbling. But then, just as quickly, her mother retreated into the folds of her own cautious worldview. "What you've done is admirable," she replied, her voice softening slightly. "But you can't expect me to embrace this new you overnight. I'm not ready for that." A sting of disappointment hit Sarah. Did her bravery lend her mother the clarity she sought, or did it only shine a light on the abyss between them? The truth of their history was becoming painfully evident, like a surge in a raging river. Each brushstroke on the canvas laid bare the fears that kept them both entrenched in their roles, the caring mother and the dutiful daughter. "Why can't you see this as a step forward?" Sarah pressed, her resolve surging. "Every painting is not just an expression of my past. It's also about where I'm going, who I want to become. I'm not the little girl who painted just to please you anymore." Her declaration rippled through the air, a challenge wrapped in vulnerability. She felt both exposed and invigorated. This was the dawn of a new chapter, one riddled with complexities. The prospect of independence loomed large, but so did the fear of confinement. Would her mother still see her in the same light? "Look," Sarah took a deep breath, gathering her thoughts with meticulous care. "This piece represents the struggle for my voice. But more importantly, it's an invitation for you to understand me now, not through my childhood, but as the adult I am becoming. Can we find a way to do that?" As she spoke, the reality of her own transformation settled upon her, solidifying like paint drying on a canvas. Sarah was no longer waiting for approval. She was creating her own narrative. Each stroke was a declaration of freedom, an affirmation of her autonomy. But at what cost? What price would they both pay for her self-discovery? Her mother seemed contemplative, caught between her ingrained instincts and the flickering hope of connection. Would this spark recognition or force her back into denial? The uncertainty gnawed at Sarah as she met her mother's gaze, searching for a spark of resolution amid the emotional tumult. Just then, her mother stepped back from the painting and sighed deeply, the weariness of years hanging in the air between them. "I never knew how to reach you, Sarah." But perhaps as those words hung precariously, a deeper challenge stirred within Sarah. She needed to probe further, to understand her mother's reticence. While revealing more of her own journey, "What did you feel when you first saw my work?" Sarah asked, her voice steady yet probing. Did her mother understand that their healing would require navigating both their vulnerabilities? Now, as they both teetered on the brink of a breakthrough, Sarah's mind raced. Could she crucially expose another layer of their relationship, or would they remain prisoners of their past? The next words from her mother could be a portal to understanding or a wall sealing them off yet again. What awaited them on the other side of that uncertain conversation? The tension in the gallery was palpable, each second stretching as Sarah stood before her mother, the essence of their journey hanging on the precipice of transformation. The words just uttered felt monumental. Sarah held tightly to the thread of hope that her mother would meet her vulnerability with an understanding born of empathy. As her mother paused, contemplative, a flicker of something fear perhaps crossed her features. "I felt overwhelmed," she finally admitted, her voice softer now, edged with vulnerability. "Seeing your life expressed on these canvases, I didn't know how to process it. I thought I had failed to reach you, to keep you safe." A rush of empathy coursed through Sarah. It was not just her own narrative unfolding now. It was her mother's, too, a tapestry woven of love and fear, a shared history that had long been hidden under layers of silence. "Mom, you didn't fail me. But we've both hidden from each other. I need you to see me for who I am now, not just as your daughter, but as an artist with a voice." Her mother stepped closer, her eyes scrutinizing a vibrant piece titled Resilience, splashes of color depicting the struggle for self-identity. Emotions swirled together in a cacophony of light and shadow. "This piece, you mean it represents your fight to be heard?" It wasn't a question, but a slow revelation. "Yes," Sarah affirmed, feeling the weight of both their pasts shift at that moment. "This is my fight, and it's hard to convey that without you truly seeing me." Silence enveloped them, but it was different now. No longer a chasm of misunderstanding. It became a bridge, an invitation for her mother to step into her world. "I wish I had known how to meet you halfway," her mother admitted, her voice heavy with reflection. "I'm just scared. I'm scared of losing you to a world I can't control." In that moment, Sarah realized how deeply entwined their fears were. "But I'm not asking you to control me. I want us to navigate this together. I want your support as I pursue my dreams." As her mother processed this, Sarah pondered the strength she had finally mustered. It was more than simply standing her ground. It was about accepting both the risk of rejection and the hope for acceptance. While art might have birthed the conversation, it was their shared choices that would ultimately decide their future. "I see now," her mother said, voice trembling slightly. "Not just the art, but the person you've grown to be. Perhaps I've been clinging too tightly to my vision for you." A fission of relief radiated through Sarah as she stepped closer, reaching for the connection they had both yearned for, but had yet to fully embrace. "If we can confront this together," Sarah proposed, "it opens a path for understanding, for healing." She could feel the courage flowing through her, solidifying the declaration of her identity. With a nod, her mother finally took a breath filled with newfound determination. "I'm willing to try," she said firmly. "Let us start by looking at these pieces together, not just as my daughter's art, but as your journey." Joy surged within Sarah. They were no longer hiding behind expectations. They spoke as two individuals, each laden with their narratives, ready to co-create a new chapter. In that moment of unity, they stepped toward another canvas, side by side, and allowed the art to facilitate a dialogue, a shared exploration of color, emotion, and understanding. As the evening continued and attendees debated the meanings behind various pieces, an exhilarating realization washed over Sarah. She had not only entered into a competition centered around her art, but she had also conquered her own fears and reclaimed her voice as a daughter, an artist, and an individual. Later that night, as the gallery buzzed with admiration for her work, a notification buzzed on her phone. It was an email confirming her acceptance into the national competition, a milestone Sarah had once viewed as a daunting task, but now greeted with wide-eyed triumph. She could hardly believe it. She had earned this chance. Amidst the accolades and recognition came a solid foundation of family support, a truth her mother had finally embraced, an empowerment they could explore together. The flickering uncertainty that once resided in Sarah's heart had transformed into solid confidence, no longer tethered by fear, but fueled by love, understanding, and a shared ambition. At that moment, she felt whole, genuinely recognized, and as the crowd celebrated her artistry, she realized she had conquered far more than just a painting competition. She had successfully blended her past with her future into an inseparable masterpiece, reaffirming her position as not only an artist, but a brave woman who chose authenticity over fear. The journey had not ended. It had merely begun. And with this new chapter, Sarah stood tall, embracing not just the art on the walls, but the uncharted canvases of tomorrow waiting for her brave strokes. Don't wait even one more second to share this powerful transformation. Reach out and share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this uplifting conclusion. You need to subscribe now to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories that inspire growth and triumph. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Let's keep stories of resilience alive. Comment below your reactions and theories about this life-changing ending. Your thoughts matter.